Everyone, can you hear me well? Do I usually make a mistake of mute? You hear me? Okay, good. So good morning to all, and welcome to Vietnam Supply Chain, the virtual series talking about supply chain and preparing for the futures. Some of you may know me very well. I can see in the list, or some of you as a new face. So my name is Queen. I'm the co-founder of Vietnam Supply Chain, and usually at Vietnam Supply Chain we have three co-founder. And yesterday you happened to meet with Julian, and today I will be your moderator to host three sections of today. Today we have a 10 a.m. section with HQTS, and another session at 11 a.m. Hosted from Singapore, talking about automations and COVID-19. Then another section at 2 p.m. With a speaker very famous. He will be hosted and talk to us from Dubai, and talking about logistics and supply chain trends for 2025. And I know this morning okay. So I know that this morning some of you may maybe struggling to get in the meeting, same link, but don't know why it didn't work. So hopefully in about a few minutes we can have also more friends joining us, and to also listen to the speaker from HQTS. All this section will be recorded, and you can watch again, listen again, and also the material maybe share after the meeting. Right now, we are having two speakers, I think, from HQTS, and we're talking about Vietnam manufacturing challenge and trends for 2021. I remember that 10 years ago when we just started Vietnam Supply Chain, and we talk about challenge like materials, raw material, dependencies, suppliers, fragmentations. And now today, the two speakers from HQTS, they were covering a new challenge, probably digitalizations. And let's see that it's been a long time. We didn't cover manufacturing, and let's see that what's new with manufacturing sector in Vietnam is a very important sector for Vietnam economy. Um, Hello, Louis and Robin. I'm not sure Robin is here. Or two of you in the screen, right? Hello. Maybe you can unmute.
Yeah, hi, morning everybody. Hi, morning Queen.
Yeah, hello, Robin, and hello,
Hi.
Louis. Yeah, two of you sharing the screen together, right?
Yes. I'll just do a quick introduction and then I'll
Yes,
pass on to Louis to
yes,
drill down into the topic,
yes.
of digital transformation.
Yeah. So today we will spend 45 minutes together, and for all the audience, you can drop the comments and also questions to us in the chat box, and then we will address that in the Q&A section. For any question that we may not be able to discuss, we will follow up by email or follow and revert it to the speaker. I'm sure that HQTS also has some Christmas gift for some surprise, for nice surprise for the audience as well.
Thank you, Queen.
Yeah, so let's do a little bit of interactions and then jump into the main topic.
Yeah, okay. Morning everybody. So my name is Robin. I'm representing HQTS as the Southeast Asia Marketing Lead. So today I will invite Louis, our partner, to talk more about digital transformation, and what are the challenges in Vietnam manufacturing supply chain, and also the trends, and opportunity for international players. Okay, so HQTS is a premium quality partner from China, and we are actually expanding very rapidly in Southeast Asia now. So I'll pass the time to Louis now to actually start, on the slide and the presentation, and then later I will tell you more about what HQTS can add value to your
Yep.
businesses. Thank you, Queen.
Yeah, I think it's very relevant, right? Because in the COVID-19 and Vietnam is a country, that we're doing, finger crossed, we're doing quite good. The government have been doing very good job with the COVID controlling and dealing with the pandemic. So we can still going out and enjoy coffee and didn't have the lockdown too much like other countries. So Vietnam has been, like a golden star and pop up. And in the Q3, Q4, we received quite a lot of requests from overseas, like how to set up in Vietnam, what is the supply chain look like from the new investors. So I think this topic is very relevant for those that from overseas want to jump in Vietnam. Hope that they can enjoy that. So for Louis, maybe you can also take over, share the screen as well, if you want.
Okay, how do I take over the screen here? Queen, you might have to.
You just share the screen, the green button. And yeah.
Okay.
How long have you been in Vietnam?
I first came in 2016.
Okay, so you master Vietnamese now at the elementary level.
Well, I would say it's survival Vietnamese. It's still quite a difficult language. Unfortunately, language has not been a very good skill of mine. But communication, we always find a way to communicate, and so it's been wonderful so far. And thank you everybody who's on the call, and thank you for Vietnam Supply Chain for this opportunity. I think there's some really great things ahead for Vietnam, and I'd like to talk about that. So as you can see, we like to go over the opportunities, challenges, and solutions. Everybody's really interested to understand. And we'll talk about how the area of technology or digital transformation can help people be successful in their strategy in Vietnam and Southeast Asia, and also how does one get started, because I think there's often a confusion as to where do we start, and the short answer is as soon as possible. Okay, so how do we do this, right? And I think here I like to just have people set their mindset properly. I think this has been an incredibly challenging year and a half for many people. And the question is this a crisis or an opportunity? And I'd like to take this to just let people know that to survive in this business and all the businesses that we're in, there's two things. We either reinvent ourselves, right, which is a constant thing, or we try to invent the future. And I think Vietnam is actually able to do both, right? Vietnam is in the process of reinventing itself, taking advantage of the global economic trends, but they're also inventing the future for themselves, right? And also for us who are invested in Vietnam, it's a privilege to be a part of helping our organizations and Vietnam to invent themselves and also create a new future. Okay, so we know as Vietnam Supply Chain has, told its members, right, there's a lot of great things happening where Vietnam is, currently centrally placed to capitalize on the decoupling of the supply chain. And sorry, someone should record this, right? So sorry.
It is recorded.
Yep, it is recorded. Okay, so capitalize right on the supply chains. There's decoupling. There's a lot of people looking to migrate, and organizations that are currently having operations in Vietnam and already looking to expand in their operations in Vietnam, I think are particularly well placed to take advantage of the investments and also being ahead of the trend. And the question for many others is, well, how do I take advantage of that? Do I need to start from scratch? Do I look to existing partners? And I think the answer is all of the above, right? I think it's hard to reinvent the wheel, and it's also hard given the travel restrictions that are going to be continuing on during this pandemic world. We can't simply just fly in our usual experts or fly in our people from headquarters or from wherever our other locations are and come into Vietnam. So I think many organizations are stuck having to look at the existing groups of organizations and companies who are already here and look at partnerships and establish different kinds of business relationships in order to get moving forward. And I think there was a really good article that Vietnam Supply Chain had posted about global manufacturers flocking to Vietnam. Are they ready? And I think that's a work in progress, right? And I think I'll also mention some of my experiences in this work in progress with organizations overseas and also organizations who are currently in Vietnam. So hopefully you guys can see this video, right? So if anyone's a Formula One racing fan, right, you'll see in the top frame in 1981, that's how Formula One racing was conducted. And this is a standard refueling pit stop. And if you're counting on the seconds, it will take that team in 1981 just under 25 seconds to get out of the pit stop and back on the racetrack. But you can see in 2019, Formula One racing is very different. That team completed their pit stop in less than 5 seconds. So you can see what is the change, what is the difference, right? In the top frame in 1981, let's call it the analog era, which is pre-internet. It's industry 2.0, 2.5, you know, it's basically all about one-to-one relationships between customers and suppliers and manufacturers. Work is considered a series of activities, right? And work is effort-based. It's manual, right? We record based on man days. But in current era, which is the digital era, or what some people like to say industry 4.0 era, we are in the era of the internet, Internet of Things, industrial internet. We have a lot more data, right? It's all captured by different sensors. Artificial intelligence is a big part of it. We have lots of analytics, and work is now about producing business insights and knowledge. It's not about a series of manual work activities. Work is also about managing machines and knowledge in parallel with our work. And ultimately, work is about integrating automation. So it's a big change, right? So you can see that in the team in 2019, the Formula One team was basically many, many more people, but they're all working in concert with each other. And in order to be successful, that's what I'm saying, is that people need to think about how do we do this and build those capabilities here in Vietnam. And the technology, as you can see in 2019, is very different from the technology used in 1981. And I think the challenges that I've seen is that many people have thinking that we can still continue to use 1981 technology or 1990 technology and still be successful in the digital era, and that's actually not true. And so what do we do for that? You know, how do we get moving? So this is the supply chain comparisons of the so-called 1981 way of working, right? 30, 40 years ago, very traditional supply chain. Everybody knows it very well. It's linear, it's serial based. First, we have a concept, we develop it, then we'll plan, you know, around that, and then we'll source, and then we'll make it, and then we do the cycle, and then we'll deliver it once the samples are approved, the products are approved, then we do into mass production, and then we go to ship them all over the world to our customers in different parts of the world. But in reality, what's happening on the fly, which some industries are ahead of the game than other industries, is that we are actually creating what we call digital supply networks. And what that means is everybody is all in sync with each other. And the syncing and being on the same page with everybody in the supply chain is based on information, the digital, right? It's technology based. And many manufacturing industries are finding that their customers want to do more integration with their supply chain partners. They want visibility. And the reason for that is because billions of dollars are actually locked into supply chain. And so for customers who are trying to manage those $1 billion of assets, they actually want their suppliers in the supply chain to actually tell them in real time the status of their particular orders or their particular assets. And it's a very challenging change for many of the supply chain actors, whether you're in distribution or you're in manufacturing or you're in material management and supplying materials, raw materials to the factories, being now asked to show and tell in real time with accuracy so that your ultimate customer can actually do their reporting as to what the status is of their particular product line, right? And to do that, everybody needs to be connected with each other. And the factory needs to be what we call smart factory, because a lot of the information that's required by customers are actually being asked into the factory, and the factories are no longer just asked to be good engineers and production people, but they're also asked to manage the digital information assets that the customer wants. And that's providing some challenges for people to change their mindsets about this. So what do we do? Let's first understand what smart factory characteristics are all about. First thing is you need to have, your internal machinery, your people, and your information all connected, right? The key central, I think, characteristic of the connected factory is that you have an integrated data set. You have a single version of the truth, right? Currently, many of our factories are dependent on supervisors of our lines to run up and down and basically have manual reports based on Excel or even on just a piece of paper saying what's happening, and then have manual collaboration across departments because you're waiting for your supervisors to complete their reporting or the Excel spreadsheet, and that takes days and takes hours, and then that's no longer viable, right? People want things on systems and platforms so that you could do data uploads very quickly to a customer portal, who then can do their information decision making. Optimization, the factory has to be optimized, right? You have to have a predictable production capacity. It's got to be reliable. Right now, people don't understand what is their production capacity if things change, and things are now changing very quickly because of the era of mass customization. Automation of production and material handling, don't run it through an Excel spreadsheet or a person who's in charge of a 50-person procurement buying team and material handling, right? That needs to be automated through RFID, integrated warehouse, so that you can lower your cost of production and also increase the quality, which is very important nowadays. Is that people who are moving into Vietnam are used to the quality that's being produced outside of Vietnam, and they want to know how quickly can Vietnam and the suppliers in Vietnam produce the same quality as their other production facilities in China. And that's a big ask, right? Because China's been very good at this for the last 30, 40 years, and it's very difficult for Vietnam to leapfrog, with only a few years under its experience to be at the same level of international capabilities and qualities, but yet that's what customers want. So how do we do that? Well, understanding and developing factory characteristics, right? As part of, when people come and say, hey, I'm looking for a new factory and you need to understand what the industrial park capabilities are. These are the kind of discussions that customers overseas or existing suppliers should be able to start asking about, right? Because you're not going to build the same blueprint factory that you built, 20, 30 years ago, right? It's a new blueprint. And it has to have a blueprint where digital is part of that blueprint, and an understanding what the digital requirement is to make your industry or your factory or your business 4.0 capable. And I think most people will understand this graphic pretty well because it's already here. This is not the future. This is already here. First, customers want shorter lead times. They want shorter product life cycles, quick. Okay. And they also want flexibility in addition to quick. Okay. So that means larger product variants and what I call mass customization, right? They want, more product variants, more options. and having it at the same quality and better quality, same or better quality than they had before. And at the same time, you have to do it more cost efficiently. So the factory's got to do things better, quicker, you know, and cheaper, which is a difficult ask, right? But that's the way the trends are. And the key other important factor to note for a lot of the people in the supply chain is cost transparency and efficiency, and certainly having confirmed unit costing. Most large organizations, customers like what I call the IKEA or Nike model, they basically want to know exactly how much your margins are, because they know exactly how much the costs are. And so they have a financial model for their products, and they expect that their contract manufacturers and the partners to follow their model, which is very difficult for a lot of factories and suppliers because they're not as digital and not as sophisticated in their production as companies like IKEA and Nike, but yet that's the trend. And then I think thirdly, what it means is this direct to customer. There's more intimacy between the customer and the producer, and that trend has started, for decades now, with platforms out of China like Alibaba, Taobao, Tmall. And basically, you can go directly to any manufacturer, any producer, anybody who can supply to the customer, and the customer says, "Let me just order from you," and you got everyone can bypass the retail. They can bypass the distributor, and it's just basically an online model, right? You have a mobile app, you have a website, let me order direct. Okay, and then they also want deep personalization of products. This is all part of this trend toward mass customization. All right, so in terms of digital trends that we see that help enable the supply chain, all the actors in the supply chain to meet those customer demands in manufacturing, these are the big ticket areas that people have already done a lot of investment in, and that should be areas of investment that should be done at the beginning, especially here in Vietnam, where there's a lot of infrastructure capacity that needs to be built. And so therefore you can build it with the modern digital blueprint and ensuring that you've got interconnected Internet of Things, 3D printing, which sometimes called additive printing, smart manufacturing with artificial intelligence, using more sensors, more robots, and using the data produced by these machinery to do predictive analytics, and ultimately riding on the so-called smart factory infrastructure, cloud computing to connect with the global world, and improving cybersecurity around all your digital assets and creating ultimately ecosystems and platforms for suppliers and customers. So I think, we understand the flows in supply chain, right, is important. Self-information, the financial, the material flows, right, across suppliers, product manufacturers, distributors, and the consumers, how to win on the quality and winning on the logistics, right? And that's all enabled by digital systems through integration of these flows, enabling capabilities, better information, better financial metrics, and better recording and management of those, as well as better material management. And now we need to integrate them. And that's why that arrow is the sort of next level of maturity, which is required in the trends that we see, is that it's no longer that you're able to manage the information flows well by itself and the financial flows by itself and the material flows by itself, but you've got to integrate all these flows together. So the disruptors that are currently affecting the supply chain in 2020, I think most of us know because we're living it on a day-by-day basis. And we don't see any change, right? The remote working, I think, will continue. Nobody knows when the world is going to be able to stop the pandemic, even with the vaccines, the positive news coming out from there. It's going to take quite a number of months before the world is able to get those vaccines out to their countries and to the people and get vaccinated and to try to stop the spread of COVID. So therefore, we just expect more remote working. Borders will continue to be closed. So therefore, how do we overcome these logistical and collaboration challenges? And the answer really is digital transformation to enhance the usage and the deployment of mobile and collaboration and communication technologies, and also increasing automation, because managing people manually is still challenging, and a lot of automation can help with those collaboration information flows that customers want. And trying to do stabilization and really resilience, as well as being agile is still, I think, an imperative that people are trying to figure out how to create in this new world. So getting started in Vietnam, I think our view is that first, strengthen your sourcing capabilities. And I mentioned earlier that given the pandemic situation that we're living in, we're going to have to really look out and further expand our supplier network, and finding out different partners, and especially those who have experience and knowledge with Southeast Asia and with Vietnam, and utilize their sort of existing networks and ecosystems and how to integrate theirs into your own. That will strengthen your ability to source and develop, and to improve quality in both product quality as well as innovation in your quality, and move to more partnering rather than order taking. I think the relationships have changed and are changing, and we all have to look at building new business capabilities and upgrade. But at the same time, we have to improve our infrastructure, increase capacity in machinery and facilities, and also people capabilities, at the same time managing the risk. And the modern technologies which we all should be looking at, and looking at how to start building that into our supply chain networks and ecosystems and our partners, and also in our own organization, is more automation, use of more analytics and big data, which will come because of using automation and better machinery and better sensors, and then also using proper information systems. And when I say systems, I'm not talking about Excel spreadsheets. And I think that's an area that has a lot of potential and a lot of growth that can be still tapped into. So how should we react to this? I think, one of the things is looking at our various different suppliers or factories particularly, and see which one of our contract factory partners are mostly impacted, and try to work with them and set up the risk level and better metrics on how to basically partner with each other to provide the best customer service and support and experience ultimately, right? We want to work with our suppliers not as a so-called fulfillment relationship, but as a partner, and increase the trust factor across our existing supply chains, so that we can build a better customer relationship and trust with our customers, and also help with the order planning. I think that's one of the areas we see that is really an opportunity to use more automation and more systems to do better planning, rather than relying on large manual teams running around with Excel spreadsheets that actually do not tie to each other, or are not actually they're just not workable with the different numbers of products and SKUs and samples that are being asked for. You need to have a system, an infrastructure around that. So some of the analytics in the product flow to win the quality is managing risk, and all these are actors. As you can see, we have risks that we can control. Here is around the supplier, the factories, and the products. We'll obviously get customer feedback and also from the retailers. But I think here, our focus in this region and in Vietnam is managing the supplier, factory, and product risk, and analytics, and having data and systems, and having the right partners to help us collect those information, and having infrastructure around that and experience around that is going to help all of us be successful and well placed for the post-pandemic economic world. And some of the examples of creating a win-win structure around this is understanding what are the right KPIs, and then those right KPIs will put and create trust on the products, and will create and further build the trust on the factories that we go out and partner with, and ultimately the whole supply chain around that particular product will get higher and higher, and therefore build more trust for the overall ecosystem that's being created in Vietnam. Some of the digital transformation opportunities, it's a little busy slide, but I think some people have asked, am I the first one? Anybody else doing this? And I think the good news is that Vietnam is not the guinea pig for doing this. Vietnam has the ability to take advantage of a lot of lessons learned from other countries and other organizations that have started the digital transformation journeys. And they've been going on for 7, and some early adopters up to 10 years, right? So none of the things that we have available in the marketplace are what I call cutting edge. No one's going to be a guinea pig. And that's the good news for Vietnam, because you will be secure and confident knowing that whatever you bring in terms of digital technology is already proven. And people have done this in these areas of operations, right? So manufacturing operations, there's been a lot done here around additive manufacturing, advanced planning and scheduling tools. You also now have sensors and robots that can help execute routine processes. And the new thing that's happening is so-called digital twin. And a digital twin is essentially a modeling of a potentially to-be process, which you think would be better, but it's very hard to do with a physical production process, because there's so much moving parts for a factory to change just to try out whether or not this is a better production and more efficient, right? So, but you use a digital twin enabled by technology to model that out, and then you can actually do it almost like a video game. Say, hey, does this work better? And if it works better, then you can then go out and actually put it into production. Warehouse operations is definitely clearly a big area, and using augmented reality, 3D, RFID, autonomous robots to help do warehousing much more efficiently. And I think that's one of the key areas, I think, opportunities for Vietnam, and those in the warehouse logistics to really upgrade and improve the so-called efficiency for the actors in the supply chain. Inventory tracking as part of it, warehouse operations, and then improving quality through real-time equipment monitoring and using optic-based analytics, right? And that's something that we are very actually happy to show with people, to basically bring the customer to where you are, because the customer can't get on an airplane, but you can actually show the customer the current existing reality on the ground with digital technologies and optical technologies, so that they will feel much more secure and confident knowing what exactly is on the ground, because they're with you. And so real-time video collaboration, VR, virtual augmented realities, those are all things that are well proven and should be deployed more. People should be looking at upgrading their ERP, MRP, MES, PLM. PLM is the product lifecycle management system, to help optimize production and material management. That should not be done on Excel, and I think that's an area of opportunity that we see more and more companies should be looking into. And I think the last piece, it's not the last, but it's not the least important, but it's the integration of audit, compliance, and testing requirements with digital technologies. And I think this is an area that needs to play catch up in order to bring the whole Vietnam supply chain ecosystem up to the level where the international markets and customers are demanding, because that's what they're used to in other areas of their supply chain. So how does that transfer or translate into your own customer experience? And I like to sort of talk about a couple of digital transformation examples, but I want to use this slide to help us sort of know which areas of our supply chain that we're used to operating. And here you can see I've split the slide up. On one slide on the left, it's supply, manufacturing, what I call the make part of the supply chain. There's many of us here on the call who are doing that. And then on the right side, we have the demand and the distribution retail, what I call the sell side of the supply chain. And all of this ultimately is geared toward making the customer very happy. It's all about how do you manage your customer relationship and how do you manage your customer experience. And the demand on that, as we all know, is getting higher and higher and asking for more and more. So underlying the make and the sell side, they're is the warehouse. And the warehouse, I keep it separate because warehousing, logistics in itself is a standalone discipline industry in itself. And whether you're on the make side, you will have a warehouse. If you're on the sell side, you will have a warehouse. And there's a lot of other actors in between who are trying to service both sides. And then to support all of this production sort of supply chain, we've got material management. And when I say material management, what I'm talking about is product information management. I'm talking about bill of materials. I'm talking about routings. I'm talking about customer and vendor information. I'm talking about price calculations and assortments of products, right? To me, that is material management. And then we have finance management. Finance management is invoice verification, payments, receipts, cash flow management, product costing, month-to-month closing, year-end closing, and consolidation of your financial reports, whether it's locally or to overseas, regional or head office reporting consolidation. And then we then have at the bottom the analytics and the reporting, which is the real-time accurate information and predictive analytics. All of these are sort of the foundation that will exist across whether you're a supplier in making and manufacturing, or you're in warehouse, or you're in demand and selling. You will need to manage your materials. You will need to manage your financial metrics, and you will need to do your reporting better and better and more accurately and more in real time, because that's what all the customers need, because the customer ultimately wants to know that information. So here's an example in a manufacturing distribution company here. It's a manufacturer that had problems, supply chain logistics. They had problems with order fulfillment. And so what kind of projects are one able to do out of that? Not only just business projects, but digital transformation or IT projects. And where we help, with that side of it is through systems, standardization and automation, eliminating, inefficiencies. And, I think that's the key part is let's not do everything 100 different ways. Let's do things in, one or two ways, so that we can have better inventory control and we can do better warehouse management. It also helps our manufacturing, because one of the challenges with manufacturers is that they just simply cannot promise estimated date of arrivals of their products. It's always constantly changing, and it's very frustrating for customers. So customers want to have a, I would say, dependable answer from the manufacturer saying, okay, if you're saying that my product is going to be delivery date 180 days, then when it's 180 days, the container's on its way, right? They don't want to hear several times that that's changed, right? And they don't want it 180 days now becoming 9 months or 365 days, which often happens in many industries, that they just keep changing because they can't hit those promise dates. Customer satisfaction was a big problem, as I mentioned before, because customers were being very, very frustrated with the fact that all the answers about when their products are ready, the quality of the products, when it's going to be shipped, and new problems in the supply chain because the materials are wrong or the materials aren't going to be able to come in time because the materials have to be sourced from a different location, and there's supply chain problems from the sourcing locations of materials, and customers are just not are just losing patience. I think they're looking, which is both an opportunity, but it's also a risk, right? And with the world being very open now to direct sourcing, those who are here in Vietnam have to look behind their shoulders, across their shoulder, and say, will the Indians and the Bangladeshis and the Sri Lankans, the Indonesians, right, take over my business? Or in some industries, will the African countries take over my business? Because customers are going to continue to source globally, and they just want people who are able to give them what they want. And so the challenge is when you have this sort of landscape, how do you future-proof yourself to make sure that the customer is very sticky to you? And I think that's the challenge with contract manufacturers, is that customers may not have that same kind of loyalty that they used to have, right? Where you would have a customer for 10, 15, 20, 30 years and everything's fantastic. But nowadays, customers will change quickly on a dime if you can't provide the quality and the speed and the product variants that they want. They're going to go and look for others, or they may choose to invest in a competitor of yours, and you may not know it, and they'll just go and have an exclusive relationship with one or two suppliers, and then that's it. Right? That's the challenge. So what do we do for them, right? I think first thing was understanding your business model, where you're going to fit into this new supply chain world and how you're going to adapt, solidify and just reconfirm the business strategy. And then IT and the digital technologies used will then be able to come in to enable that business strategy, right? And I think the first step for most companies is to have an IT strategy established. Many companies think that they're buying IT like they would buy their own personal consumer IT gadget, and just go to a shop and say, oh, I like this, and I'll just buy it and use it. But that's not how you buy technology for enterprises. You actually do need to have an experienced IT advisor. If you don't have an IT director or senior IT leader in your company to help you know what is the right IT strategy to align to your business strategy. And then you have to build what I would call global unified collaborations and communications platforms. And that's really to help your customers and your suppliers come into your area and communicate and be very transparent of what it is that's happening with that particular account or with that particular product. And the more collaboration and transparency and more teamwork, and that will actually build better relationships and more successful relationships that then will feed into your infrastructure. And infrastructure is your factory, your warehouse, your retail shops, right? Those are the kind of infrastructure that people like to invest in. But before you do that, you also need to understand, what are the IT capabilities that you need to build into those infrastructure, because IT technologies and digital technologies in today's digital world and digital era is just like your plumbing. It's just like having, good electricity and wiring, good plumbing, making sure all of that is working seamlessly and without any problems. And then that translates to specific IT systems for your company. It could be your MRP, ERP, it could be your data analytics, it could be your planning tool, production planning, it could be inventory planning, it could be material planning. So your master data management will be improved and upgraded, and your financial reporting will be upgraded and improved. And certainly the product information management capabilities of thousands of SKUs that you're being asked to produce every single year will also improve and provide very good customer experience. Okay, So I think basically a quick one in around sourcing and distribution. They have typical contract manufacturing management problems. You know, when you're asked to manage 150 different suppliers, you know, how can you do that manually? You just don't have enough people on the ground to basically chase up all those 150 different suppliers. So help them implement and choose the right product lifecycle management processes, right, to standardize and to automate. And then that will help you with your order fulfillment and manage the process and the project and the status of that particular customer order. And this is an example of the product lifecycle management system and how it looks like, right? You have this three-pronged relationship, this triangular relationship between your customer, your design and development team, whether that's sitting with your customer or sitting with your head office, and then you here sitting as the sourcing and supplier management in Vietnam. You need to have a single source of the truth, a single version of the truth that's being taken care of by this PLM system in a single database, so that people understand what is the product that's being worked on, what is the design that we're working on, and also the approvals and the collaborations and teamwork around all these parties to make sure that you're going to hit your timelines correctly and you're going to hit your qualities correctly. And I think this is an area of opportunity I think a lot of customers need to be looking at as well. Okay, so in terms of the case studies, I think, you know, the QTS had some virtual audit. This again, using tools, collaboration tools are examples of how we can use and leverage technology in this current pandemic world where we can't travel. So we have to bring the world to wherever the world is. And that's going to be depending on more and more technology, cloud collaboration tools like Zoom, a lot of webinars and a lot of platforms like this that can help bring the world closer to us and us closer to the world. Okay. So I think pretty much that's about it for now. I think it's been quite a lot.
It's a lot to digest. Thank you, Lou, for sharing a lot of details. I know we run out of time, but before the next section go on, we have a few questions here that you can comment. As 2016, we were so excited to know that Adidas launching the first speed factory with a lot of robot automations, like 100,000 of pair of shoes, sneaker. Yep. And then they opened the third one. And what happened early this year is that they closed the first one. So what I want to mention about that story is that, like, we talk a lot about the good thing about the digitalizations and industry 4.0 and all those kind of things. What is the downside, the bad and the ugly side? Because I think the first thing many people, like, in fact, in manufacturing in Vietnam, is an area that where we create jobs as well. So any comment on the downside of digitalization for factory?
Yeah, and that's a very good question, which I didn't talk about, but it is part of the risks, right? And the risk factor is that the people side of things, right? And the maturity of the organizations to manage the digital assets in a more digital advanced factory or operations are not able to keep up. And I know from the HR side, finding people who know how to put it in, then know how to run it and manage it is very hard to find. And so the training of staff, training of managers is something that needs to be done. And there's two ways of doing that. One is you bring overseas experts. And in the past, when we could still fly, that's what a lot of international organizations would do. They would say, hey, I'll send somebody from my head office. We'll have several experts from different areas of our, group companies, and we'll come here in Vietnam and we'll provide that sort of knowledge transfer. Well, we can't do that very well now. And even using Zoom, as a learning tool and a communications tool, it's very hard to learn. And so therefore, it's important that we find and leverage existing partners or develop the capabilities here in Vietnam, working with those who already have that experience here, and continue to develop that in-house. And once you can do that, then you can evolve your platform. And I think people need to understand that digital technologies help companies evolve and be more agile. And it's a learning experience. And I don't want to say that digital technology is a magic bullet, but I think nowadays, as I showed from that Formula One racing, is that you need to have it, but you need to practice using it more and more. And the more practice you have with it, the better you'll be at it, and basically use it in a way that your customers will be very pleased, very happy, and will give you more business.
Mm. Okay, so Rich is one thing. You in your sharing, you mentioned about a trend for manufacturing. Is it like factory need to work on solutions or delivery product? I mean, better product, quicker and cheaper. You didn't mention about greener or more ethical, because I think that is sustainability is one of the trend must have happened with the older case that happened in Bangladesh for fast fashion and those kind of things. Um, Maybe you can comment more about
Yes.
this kind of trend, because I think if we keep going on better, quicker, and cheaper products, I think the earth will not be able to support us anymore.
Yeah, you're right, Queen. I think that is one of the customer requirements is in this compliance about, as you say, ethical, greener, more friendly way of manufacturing and producing products. And I think that's where having a strong partner who has experience in quality inspections and also providing product monitoring and certification is, I think, one of the business requirements. It's not a technical requirement, but it is a business requirement. And we on the technical side know that in order to help with that compliance and sort of product innovation that's using more sustainable materials, you can do that with better KPIs, working with your third-party expert to create that list and use that as part of the business reporting that you would do for your customers. And then you can validate what you've done as a check by using technologies. For example, videos. You can do essentially collaboration tools where you can have field management tools that can bring the operating environment to your customer, and you can record it just like you're doing here on this webinar. You can record it and you can send it so that the customer can pick it up, when they wake up in the day. And so those are the kind of things that technology will play a supporting role, but it's a very important supporting role to help people get better in those areas.
Okay. My last question is, I think you mentioned about product risk in Vietnam, and you're also sharing the roadmap for any manufacturers, especially SME in Vietnam, want to take the next challenge in digitalization and technology. That it seemed to be a bit overwhelmed with those 5 blocks and a lot of work for IT readiness and also system. And very often people think that like the first thing when they do about technology is to get a software or to buy a gadget. What could be based on your experience, your three years in Vietnam and observing Vietnamese manufacturers, what is the first 3 simple things you think that they can do, and like a simple step and small step before they take for the whole journey for this?
Thank you for that question. I think the first thing is having an IT expert, and the mindset that I can't run my business nowadays where I could just use a third-party IT person and buy a product or software, as you say. But I need to actually have an integrated IT function that is part of my business. right? Because IT is as important to any business, just like facilities management is, finance is, operations is. And so for, people like myself and the consultancy that we do, we basically sit down with a customer and help map out their strategy. So the example I show and tell people is, here in Vietnam, everybody loves using the Grab, right? Everyone uses Grab. And when you use Grab, you have to basically tell your driver, your Grab driver, where you are and where you want to go. And our role is basically helping companies basically do that. And we help them choose which route to take, which technologies that they should be looking to adopt. And the easy, quick wins that everybody should have are, let's have a strategy. Let's have a communication platform, which what I mean by that is don't use Zillow, right? It's not using Zoom, right? You need to actually have a company-wide communications platform, which your customers can also come in and also share information. And then the other thing that is very important is how to upgrade your company's internal network so that it's just as reliable and dependable as you would expect for your utilities to work. And that's usually what most transformations in most companies, in my experience outside of Vietnam, we've done, is those are the basics. And then the second most important thing is, as you've figured out what your business model is, then the IT advisor, which is a service we provide, will then tell you how or which tool to use to help you make your product and service better, or how you can sell your product and service better, or how do you manage your money better, right? These are the three areas that every company is always worried about. How do I make it better? How do I sell it better? And how do I manage the money? Right? And every company has different problems, right? In these areas. And this is where having advisory services in this and having an experienced person who's done this for different industries can come and basically help you focus on your priorities and focus your investment for the biggest bang for your buck, right? You can't, fix everything all at once, but you have to have a plan, a step-by-step plan.
Yep. I think it's a very good, thank you for your sharing. I think it's a very good introductions that we lead to the next topic section that we're going to have in a few minutes with Dixon Yeo. So I think for now, thank you, Lou and Robin from HQTS. I think you will share some of the slide as a guideline for people, for manufacturers in Vietnam who want to take up the journey with technology and digitalizations. It's very different from the last 10 years when I first to know about manufacturing production in Vietnam. We talk about lean, production excellence, those kind of things. And now we are really talking about technology, how to make the work and the flow, how to make the data. It's very different from 10 years ago. It was like paper and pencil, even though it still happens now. And I mean, like in the very, very nano and super small business, like family business or something like that. So technology is something that it's not a question, it's about if should or should not, is about when and what is the first step that we take up. And I'm sure the thing will be very much different in about next 3 to 5 years with all these things happen. I start to see factory in Vietnam that using like HoloLens, hologram and all this to apply in factory layouts. Everyone try to utilize and apply as much as possible in their hands to make the job easier. So it's not about if, it's about when. And I think we should the next generation, it should be like technology is a must. So thank you for your sharing today. I think it's very helpful for a lot of company that's still curious about this, and hopefully they are inspired and take some guideline. Thank you, Louis, and anyone who interested can go into the website of HQTS or checking the case study there, or contacting them directly. I'm sure they have some kind of nice surprise and further consulting or sharing with those interests. Feel free to contact them. And for now, thank you, Louis, and have a good day. And we will shifting right away to the next section with Dixon Yale. Thank you, Louis, for your time and sharing. Dixon, are you around? I see you in the room. Dixon, I think the first time we met. Hello. Are you mute? Let me unmute you. Hi, Dixon.
Hi, everyone. I'm also on video. And yes, good morning to everyone in Vietnam, and also I think some of them in Southeast Asia.
Yes, I think you have some fan. I think some people contact me on LinkedIn and say, I'm not in Vietnam, can I join? Because I like the topic of Dixon. So I think it's, you have quite some fan club here. It's been 5 years. We got to know each other from Supply Chain Asia. And we keep talking about like bringing Dixon to Vietnam and sharing about automation, technology, and supply chain and logistics. And we keep like, things didn't happen. But now, thanks to COVID, finally we make it happen, right? After 5 years.
Yes.
So I think yesterday Paul Lim from Paul, our dear friend, also talking about demystifying the supply chain technology, putting a foundation for this week event for Vietnam supply chain. And then just 1 hour ago, we have Louis from HQTS talking about manufacturing trend. And one of the trend, the mega trend is the must happen one is technology and digitalizing the manufacturing as much as we can. So we are very curious to know what you're going to share about augmenting supply chain. And with the context of COVID-19, that we believe that it will take maybe 1 or 2 years more to handling the consequence after that, to get over the pandemic. Hopefully, if we have all the vaccines distributed smoothly. So how's everything in Singapore? And feel free to jump in your slide. We're going to have 1 hour together, but probably after your sharing, we leave around a few minutes for people to share questions, some Q&A. That would be nice to end before lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very happy to do that. Right. I will do the share screen now.
Yes, please. Okay. Is there any slide that you're going to share after the meeting?
No, yeah.
No? Okay.
Because we also use it for other sessions. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can you see my slide? And I'm putting that on slide mode now.
I see, yes, I see the full screen of the slide now. Perfect.
All right. Hi, good morning, everyone. And in Southeast Asia, I think in Singapore now it's lunchtime now, 12 noon. But very happy to be with you all, right? Okay, I'll be sharing this topic about augmenting the supply chain responses to COVID-19 challenges with automation. I have a previous experience at Ground Zero during the SARS period in 2003. Wow. I joined NTUC FairPrice. So I was there right at the Fresh Food Distribution Center, experiencing some of the things that we go through. But the SARS period was a short period. And then now we are in the midst of COVID, and it's already more than 10 months by now. Yeah. Right. I'm very pleased to share my experience with SARS, and then also what I see in this COVID-19, and share some thoughts with you all in terms of supply chain and logistics. And we're basically going to talk about 3 strategies. There's this stockpile strategy, and then there's this cold chain strategy. And then from this COVID-19, which I didn't experience in SARS period, was the e-commerce strategy. Become very important in the business world today. And then I will show you some of the example on digitalization, on visualization. I will just run through a very quick background on COVID-19 in the Southeast Asia region, where we are now in terms of Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Philippines. Right, the background of COVID-19 in Southeast Asia, we just look at some timelines. Let's bring us back all the way to beginning of the year in January, where COVID-19 happened in Wuhan in December, and they announced it. And then WHO issued the pandemic warning, issuing a public health emergency of international concern on 30th January. And by then, Singapore already announced a DOSCOM yellow and then subsequently upgrading it to DOSCOM orange in February. And by then, Malaysia also got some infections, low infections imported from cases in Singapore. And then looking at the chart, we also got cases in about late January in Vietnam as well, right? And of course, then the first death case in the Southeast Asia occurred in Thailand on 1st March. What happened then? Immediately, we have a few countries that start to announce lockdowns, or some other terms like movement control orders in Malaysia. On 18 March, Singapore implemented what is known as a circuit breaker 3 weeks after in early April. Vietnam announced it on 14 Feb, Philippines 13 March. And then of course, Thailand has a state of emergency from late March onwards. And from what we know now today, in December 2020, we are still at some stage of lockdowns or circuit breaker, or in Malaysia is conditional movement control orders. And then in April 19, we look at this chart, the infection rate, looking at it then, we thought it was high, but if you look back exactly now, it was much higher than that. Some of these countries is 10 times more or 100 times more. So now, as we stand in December, this data is on 14 December, Vietnam had done very well. Total cases, about 1,300. The other country that done very well was Thailand, about 4,000 over cases. But Malaysia, Singapore, we were struggling a little bit with the foreign migrant workers, and then the cases in Singapore, almost 60,000. Malaysia already exceeded 80,000. Of course, the large population countries like Indonesia and Philippines, they have moved almost 500,000, 500,000 cases. But look at the world is already 72 million confirmed cases. And the alarming thing is of which 1.6 million have died of COVID-19. And this rate, fatality rate is 2.2%, although it's lower than SARS or MERS or Ebola. But due to the high infection rate, the infection rate is so high that the death cases is 1,500 times higher than SARS and MERS. And because of this, many countries went into lockdowns. And we know that for the last 10, 11 months, the lockdowns are still occurring. In fact, some countries went to reimpose it, in example, UK, France, and Germany. And the alarming thing to us is that all travel stops, right? Travel restriction is imposed, and 90% of the airline planes are all grounded. And I came out with this chart in April. All right, from my experience in during SARS 2003, MD Southeast Asia Swisslog asked me, Dixon, can you look at what happened? And I came out with this chart in April. And I showed it again in December. We look at this thing, it is still there. All right, the situation is still there. Right at the ripple effect, right at the center is airlines, airports, tourism, all going down to single digit level of what they used to do in the past. Oil prices has dropped because of lockdown. Motor cars are not moving on the road. Of course, there are some recovery. For this ripple effect, it has gone into hotels. It has gone into F&B, food and beverage outlets. It has affected luxury goods, and we know that the shopping malls are largely affected, although there are some recovery. Of course, the red color impact is much greater, but then going on to further and further out, the ripple get bigger and bigger. And here in April, it's already announced 15% of the hotels in Malaysia. And now, as I know, there are some brand names hotel, 4-star hotel, they are closed down in Malaysia. And in Singapore, you find that the airline is struggling. 97% or the 96, 97 of the capacity is down. And we know the airlines in this region is also struggling with their cash flow, SIA, Thai Airways, Air Asia, Malaysia Airlines, and so on. But this is the situation. What are the opportunities? Here is a diagram that I choose to push up so that we at least draw some comfort from there. And this opportunity that I'm putting here relate more to supply chain and logistics. All right, I'm not talking about the other businesses. I'm solely looking at supply chain and logistics. Right at the middle of this opportunity is grocery, the supermarket business, the convenience stores, all right? And then there are the medical supply areas, the food sector, which the supermarket is part of it, and then food production, and then a health sector in terms of the medical supply that need to be, all these are basically helping the frontliners, all right? And then with that opportunity in the bigger bubble, you basically have medical logistics, stockpiling occurring, e-commerce has a boom as a result, cold chain is drawing more importance, grocery logistics in terms of the supermarket supplies is important. Isolation centers, a lot of isolation centers are quickly put up so that they can support the isolation of suspected cases. Of course, then that will lead to bigger opportunity in terms of warehouse reuse, distribution, light goods automation, cold rooms, which I will be covering in the later part of my presentation. And then, of course, going to the big bubble, there are further opportunities in terms of ready-to-eat food, ready-to-cook. And of course, there's this big supply chain shift that we're talking about. And we say that within the ASEAN country, Vietnam is already the biggest beneficiary of this big supply chain shift. What is it? We'll talk a bit more later on. This is news that is already drawn in late April. Sheng Siong, one of the leading supermarket retailer in Singapore, they make 50% more revenue in the first quarter of this year. 50% more revenue, they make 50% more profit in the first quarter of this year compared to 2019, of which 30% increase in revenue. So their business is actually booming. So the supermarket business during this period actually boomed. What happened is that there is this shift of eating in restaurant, eating in food outlets, going back to buying food from supermarket. What else is booming? We know that tech stocks in the stock market is booming, right? Tech stocks, so you look at post-COVID era, more and more automation, robotics, AGV is going to come in. So that gives the background to what I want to say in the three strategy. So I'm going to move into the three strategy. The first one is stockpile strategy. It's important for us to realize as a lesson that this pandemic is a long period that we went through. And then there's disease X that some writers have write about that may occur again in the future. Something that is probably worse than COVID-19. And this stockpile strategy is one lesson that we learned since 2003. And this is a lesson I think ASEAN countries is going to find it interesting to pursue this line. Market reaction during COVID-19. Singapore experienced 3 panic buying spree during all the major announcements on 7 February, on 18 March, and on 7 April. So much so that our Prime Minister of Singapore did tell in a broadcast that people, please calm down. When I say calm down, it means don't come down to the supermarket actually, which was really crowded. And this picture shows that toiletry products are all empty off the shelf. Malaysia also got panic buying of the supermarket on the 16th and 17th March, just before the MCO, same as Bangkok. And we have many articles of these occurring in South Korea, in Japan, in New Zealand, in Europe, as in Italy, Germany, France, where the supermarket shelves are just empty of. What are they buying? Well, for very strange reason, a lot of them buy paper products like toilet roll, tissue paper, kitchen towel, and diapers. Next, top of line, as you see in this picture, is canned food and stable food like noodles and flours, biscuits. And the other category is frozen food, all right? Particularly frozen meat. I will touch it in the second strategy, hand sanitizer, and of course, the very important medical product. Let's have a look at this video.
I buy this few items only, so just for standby for this few weeks. And why? I'm just scared that later on don't have, because now everywhere don't have. Just now I go and you see also the rice, Maggi meal, even though all no more. So I just buy some for this few weeks standby.
So we can see that happening in the supermarket. As a result, as I say, the supermarket retailers actually enjoy a much greater revenue and also profit. The other alarming thing is that there was shortage of critical PPEs, all right, personal protective equipment. Given the situation at 31st January, the production rate for surgical masks for the entire world is 50 million per day. All right, of which China produced 22 million, and their factories were shut during the Chinese New Year. And there was big problem of short supply of critical equipment. And today, we still find that in some hospitals, there's this shortage of supply, mainly because of distribution, mainly because of logistics, all right? Now, we earlier said that the supermarket ran out of tissue paper in paper products occurring in many countries. And one of the things that a major retailer in Singapore, NTUC FairPrice, what they do was to showcase their distribution center, and they showcase their stockpile. And because of this showcasing, the buying spree of some of these products in supermarket died down a little bit. And here, CEO or NTUC FairPrice did say, at this point in time, we have over 9 million toilet rolls, we have 1.2 million packs of instant noodle, we have 4 million kilos of rice, and presently this stock continues to come in. And the DC infrastructure, this Benoit DC that is showcased here, is actually a ASRS automated distribution center. And please watch this video where the news media were invited to see it. This product is rice.
It represents a new high in
Toilet rolls. Toilet rolls. Kitchen towers. ASRS, automated warehouse. Instant noodles. So we have just seen a video of a media event where the stockpile was showcased and it helped to calm down the people to say there is enough stock. All right. And also at the same time, they are bringing in additional stock. But you also need a stockpile facility to do that. So this infrastructure are built over a period of time. And so in Singapore, example that we show here is that we learned this lesson, hard lesson from 2003 SARS period. But this period of COVID is multiplied many times over. So it does help to have good supply chain and logistics. How does we help with stockpile? As I mentioned earlier, and we saw in the video, is basically an ASRS stockpile warehouse. In this case, you actually use a crane that reach 40 meter high. Using manual means you can only reach up to 12 meter, all right? And in an ASRS warehouse, typically we will do at least double dip because the crane can do it easily. For human to do it manually, double dip is quite difficult at higher heights. But for ASRS, you can do double dip all the way to 40 meter high. And the pallet position could be about 19-20 pallet high in the warehouse, right? So we can see that you can, even to the right-hand side, you can use a multi-dip for some of the products that are big volume in nature. Now we did a study, right? ASRS double dip versus conventional rack warehouse. Firstly, ASRS have 40 meter high of storage compared to 12 meter for manual racks. So this already provide you 330% more storage. Number two, ASRS use 1.6 meter aisles, but we know for pallet racking we need 3.2, and that cut down a lot of the aisle space, wasted space of a warehouse, and increase storage by 33% more. As I mentioned earlier, the crane can do double dip easily for an ASRS warehouse, but for conventional rack, it's operator, human, prone to error, and very high risk to go double dip. And using double dip, you can increase storage by another 60%. And what we can mention here from our study is that the ASRS warehouse occupy for 40 meter high, they occupy only 1/4 of a manual rack warehouse. What happened then? What we are saying is that the 75% of the warehouse space, if you're going to build new warehouse, this money that put into a building the 75% bigger warehouse, the money could be spent to go into the automation, ASRS warehouse. And then, of course, you pay much less for the land if you need to buy the land or land rental. Now, the other beauty thing about ASRS warehouse is that in the times of pandemic, when you need to call out the goods can be called out very quickly. How quickly? Now I show you. Crane versus a reach truck operator. Now, a ASRS crane typically handle about 50 pallets per hour. A reach truck operator in a manual warehouse, if you measure it, we know it's about 25 pallets per hour. So this is 2 times more in terms of the capability. So earlier we talked about capacity. Here we look at the capability of a ASRS warehouse. So when the operation is designed for 2 shifts, right? You have a 2-shift operation. So you find that one ASRS crane will save 4 operators. ASRS machine doesn't take lunch. So you got 1 more hour during lunch, and that will increase your productivity by another 12%. Now, if the operation is 7 days, like the distribution center supporting the supermarket and the retailers, they are working 7 days. So that is another 20%, 30% savings. So all in all, one crane operates and can replace about 5.5 to 6 operators. And in Singapore operation, the headcount or the salary cost is more than the investment cost of one crane. Of course, in Vietnam, the combination of saving warehouse space, the combination from saving from the labor cost would help you to build a stockpile warehouse using a ASRS. Then the question is, how do I do the picking, case picking in ASRS warehouse? In a Swisslog design, we have come out with a good and low cost model, right, for Southeast Asia countries, particularly for Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and to some extent Singapore, right? What we have here is a design, what we call a tunnel, picking tunnel. And this picking tunnel, you see the operator, he's operating inside the ASRS warehouse, right? If you can see it from the yellow cranes, okay, right? I have a pointer here. So you can see the yellow crane operating in the other aisles. So in between two crane aisles, you have this picking tunnel where human can work in ASRS. A lot of people, because of the lack of knowledge, they say the ASRS only pallet in, pallet out. But here you find that a picking tunnel can be built within an ASRS module or warehouse. So the stock replenishment is automatically by the crane. Again, further reduction of reach truck operator and forklift drivers. The other beauty thing is that in the manual warehouse, you have put away and taking the full pallet reach truck operating in the same aisles as the picker. So in times when you need to do loose picking, you also need to do a lot of put away. For example, in the COVID-19 situation where there are a lot of movement, what happened? Your productivity actually drop and drop and drop. Reason is that you got reach truck operator and you have pickers all operating within the same house. Of course, there is also then the safety problems. But in this ASRS tunnel pick model, the crane is replenishment for behind and the picker is picking from the front. So in times of pandemic, when volume or demand will go up, you can put in more picker into the picking tunnel, but you not necessarily have more reach truck or forklift in the aisles that actually slow down the operation further. So this is a model that we thought would work for a lot of Southeast Asia countries. And here is the example that I will show you what happened in the picking tunnel as well as the stock replenishment. Crane taking pallet to replenish. Crane behind. So we have covered the stockpile strategy. As I say, if Southeast Asia want to prepare for the next pandemic situation, you need more goods to stockpile. ASRS is a good solution. And for Vietnam case, there is also this typhoon issue, or in a case of during some of the disaster recovery, you find that then a stockpile is a good strategy. Next, I will cover cold chain strategy, and cold chain particularly more for food. We will touch a little bit on the vaccine later. During the onset of COVID in the early months of January, February, food market seen a greater demand for frozen food like chicken, processed food, and also vegetable. And demand of this item actually increased by almost 30%. And then there are also reports that people are buying more chest freezers to store frozen and chilled food. This trend that you saw in Malaysia, I'm sure you also see it in Vietnam and Thailand. That is what we call open air market or the traditional market. In Singapore, during the SARS, this was largely removed during the SARS period, all right? And during this pandemic period, there is a lot of problem controlling the crowd in this open air market. That is the first problem. There is the second problem, which China also realized now, that is reported in the Wuhan case, that the spread of COVID actually probably happened from a wet market in Wuhan, a wet market for seafood. And so you find that this situation, this is one of public practices that would be removed in a sense of open air market where it's harder to control the crowd. Two, is also the public health safety to slaughter chicken or to process fish and other things within the supermarket, wet market. And the spread of public health disease is quite high. So we will watch this trend that government actually want to do, most government want to do away with open market over a period of time. So what does it mean now? The supermarket retailer has opportunity. This opportunity lies in a good cold chain management. If we invest in a good cold chain management, as in Singapore, we actually invested in cold chain management since 2003, right? So firstly, frozen food can actually travel long distances between food consumption and food production. We actually have frozen chicken and chicken parts all the way from Brazil, from US, from Holland, coming into Singapore. So they can actually travel very, very long distance. And you can distribute to population efficiently. Frozen food can easily move to markets 2 hours away, 3 hours away, 4 hours away for local distribution without the food going bad. It is also a good strategy for food scare and disease, whereby it causes shortage. We have experienced, as I say, I experienced the SARS in 2003. After that, I do experience certain rehearsals and drills for avian flu, for swine flu, and therefore we know about this stockpile strategy using cold chain. So for Vietnam, we know that the avian flu for Vietnam is the risk is always high, right? Outbreaks of food poisoning, consumer education, and of course, more and more for fresh and natural food. So for a resilient food supply, the use of cold chain, and you will notice that in supermarkets, I think supermarket is really growing big in Vietnam, Thailand, and also the convenience stores are also growing. And then we see that more and more cold chain food will come into being. Of course, they will prolong the product shelf life. If you slaughter a chicken and sell in the wet market today, you can only sell it today. But if you slaughter a chicken and you freeze it, you can actually expand the shelf life all the way by 1 year. And of course, some of the products will be 6 months to a year. And you find the retailing hours may not be only in the morning, and they can actually buy it in the evening. Wet markets are typically closed by afternoon, right? And of course, you will help in this local distribution. And we see that this situation, if you apply in the lockdowns, you find that you actually still have frozen meat, you have chilled meat, which are then thawed and then give you the necessary supply. This is an example of Singapore receiving 20 tons of meat in April from New Zealand by flight, and this is by cold chain. The other area that we talk about is what we call ready to eat or ready to cook food. I'm not so sure about Vietnam having this, but certainly in Thailand, Malaysia, this trend is already ongoing. If you look at this food down here, which is a pork meal with rice, it costs about 45 bahts. This 45 bahts in Vietnam is about 30,000 dong, which is a typical meal for office worker, right? 30,000 dong. And also you got this garlic pork, garlic and pepper pork. You also got the prawn wonton over here. So these are basically food that are already pre-prepared in a central kitchen, and they are frozen. And they are frozen, they can be sold in the supermarket, they can be sold in the convenience stores. And here we also have an example of something in Malaysia. Similarly, the pricing about 4-5 ringgit, 5-6 ringgit. And this is also about the pricing that Vietnam office worker will find it attractive. So the pricing of this can be low. So what happened is that when there is a big sudden lockdown, an emergency lockdown of a district or a block of flats because of COVID, this frozen food could be from the production house, move them to where the block is under lockdown, and you still can have food by heating up. Or during emergency in pandemic in Singapore, a lot of the Singaporean don't know how to cook after a period of time of working in the office. They actually buy this ready to eat or ready to cook food, and they just need to heat it up by microwave or by heating, right? And here I have a video showing you how this production is done and how they use it in this COVID situation. And you will notice that the automation, the logistic automation actually enable the capability. You will see Mimi Load handling this all the way from production without any human in between. And they have a warehouse, they have an order preparation, and the order actually goes out.
ลายการผลิตสะอาดเพราะเป็นโรงงานระบบปิดและควบคุมอุณหภูมิแม้แต่พื้นก็ต้องแห้งสนิททุกตารางนิ้วและแยกลายผลิตชัดเจนเพื่อควบคุมไม่ให้เกิดการปนเปื้อนและความสะอาดก็ไม่ใช่แค่มาตรฐานแต่คือหัวใจหลักที่พนักงานทุกคนยึดมั่นด้วยเทคโนโลยีหุ่นยนต์และแขนกลขั้นสูงนำไปสู่ลายการผลิตแบบ Fully Auto ที่ไม่สัมผัสมือคนเราจึงมั่นใจได้ว่าปลอดเชื้อปนเปื้อน 100%แม้ในช่วงเวลาพักความเคร่งครัดเรื่องการปลอดเชื้อก็ไม่เคยหยุดพักเราไม่เคยหยุดสายพานการผลิตเพราะเราตระหนักดีว่าที่ปลายทางคือคนไทยที่ต้องการอาหารที่ดีอาหารที่ปลอดภัยและมั่นใจได้ว่าจะไม่ขาดช่วงในทุกสถานการณ์เรายังมุ่งมั่นที่จะส่งมอบอาหารอร่อยและปลอดภัยเพื่อสนับสนุนบุคลากรทางการแพทย์ในช่วงเวลานี้เพราะความตั้งใจความมุ่งมั่นและพันธกิจของพวกเราทุกคนที่นี่คืออาหารที่ดีคืออาหารที่อร่อยคืออาหารที่สดสะอาดปลอดภัยไม่ว่าสถานการณ์ไหน CP มุ่งมั่นผลิตอาหารสดสะอาดปลอดภัยและเราจะผ่านวิกฤตนี้ไปด้วยกัน
Now we can see that this food production is going into frozen or chilled. You firstly expand the shelf life. Number two, the distribution by refrigerator truck is very efficient. It can bring it for 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, or even 3-4 hours of driving to the next destination. Right? So it helps in really stockpiling as well as distribution. And the consumer can also buy and keep it at home, right? To support. What am I saying here? So in Vietnam case, the city like Ho Chi Minh is getting bigger and bigger. So is Hanoi, so is Da Nang. As the city get bigger like Thailand, Bangkok, in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, you got about 10 million people staying in the city, right? When you have a pandemic situation and you lock down the city like Wuhan, you lock down a city of 11 million people, where are you going to get the food from? The wet markets or the open air market may not be allowed to open, right? So frozen food, cold chain food logistic is going to be up there in the minds of many governments. That is one way to help, all right, in a situation like this. Then again, you say, how do we do the picking? All right, here we're going to show you a goods to man picking from a frozen warehouse coming out to a non-frozen room where the picking are being carried out. I'm showing you an animation video. ASRS, take out the pallet. Pallet is brought out by conveyor out to a room that is about 15 to 17 degrees. So the human does not need to work in the frozen. Order pallet is being released. Picker pick the first product to any of the 4 pallets as per their orders. Picking continue for the second product. If the order is finished, the order product can move off to be shrink wrapped and then go back to the frozen warehouse to be staged. So the order pallet now is being shrink wrapped and put back in frozen until the truck arrival. So this room has indicated 17 degrees. I finished the second strategy. I'm quickly going on to the last strategy that is really of interest during this period. Not only it helped in the initial grocery purchases, but we find that subsequently they go into the office equipment like printers, computers. You also go into furnitures. You also go into some other products that is required to support the work from home strategy of many governments. This is a visit by a cabinet minister of Singapore, and they visit the online fulfillment site. All right, here I'm talking a bit more on online grocery. All right, there's a lot of opportunity for retail, e-commerce, like for fashion, for shoes and others, but I'm just concentrating on grocery. And we know that from the Doscom Orange, the orders surge more by 3 times, about 3 to 5 times more. And the deliveries start to get late because of the inability to get out the orders for the fulfillment centers. In Malaysia, there are also grocery deliveries, and they face overwhelming responses because people are locked down, they cannot travel out, so they went into online to buy. Right here, what we are saying is that after experiencing and learning how to order online, a lot of the e-commerce players are saying this trend will continue, right, into next year and the years after, because the people already learn how to order online and they have received their product safe. And because of that experience, you find that the online sale is given, all right, e-commerce is given really a boost in the way they do their business. Here I'm going to show you a biggest vending machine in Asia. What is a vending machine? You put a coin and you get a can of drinks out. Right here, you can actually put in an order and then you get all the orders all coming out. All right, so this is the biggest vending machine. It increased productivity. It also increased the storage capacity. More important, we talk about digitalization, and this is digitalization of a lot of the manual work that is involved. What is involved? Robots is used to pick the bin. These are the robots. They are being brought to the picking station for the picker. Picker is stationary, no need to travel. So using manual system, they find that in the past they handle about 800 orders. And by using the auto store that which Swisslog has implemented, the orders can be handled 4 times more. And of course, using the further enhanced model, the orders can go all the way up to 6,000 orders, and that is for 2 shifts. And by increasing another 3rd shift, they can also then increase the number of orders handled. And basically now, as the enhanced model they have an auto store. They use a conveyor to bring the orders to a shuttle base for vertical staging, for consolidation, and then robots will be used. This is another video of auto store, how they are used in e-commerce. So AutoStore helped to compact the warehouse usage. It used almost 20% of manual area. And this is how the process looks like, where you got a picker. The picker is stationary. And after it pick, the conveyor bring the order to the blue boxes to vertical staging. And it can also use for sortation. A lot of e-commerce need to use a sortation system to sort it to route, but you put it to a vertical staging. When the orders come out by itself, it's automatically sorted to orders. All right. So now the shipments need to come out. So the order for that truck, all the orders for that truck is coming out. You see the blue boxes coming out from the case shutter system. And this case shutter system is then brought to a robot, which will automatically then palletize all these totes up. So you see the workflow is digitalized. Right, the system enable this order to be processed, wait for the truck, come out when the truck arrives. And after the robot have palletized the tote for the truck, all right, then the AGV can move this whole pallet to a staging area. Or the AGV can also take a cargo lift to move to another level to do the truck loading. And of course, you will never have this sort of situation in the e-commerce fulfillment center. In future, you can also have robots to do the picking. All right, I'm going to quickly finish off my presentation. I will just show you this visualization. I always love to tell this camel story. What do you see in this picture?
Camel.
Yes. They are camels, and camels is a symbol of logistic in the past, right? And here is a lesson in digital twin. This is what we call digital twin or digital shadow. What we want to tell you is that the shadow, the black marks camels that you saw are not the actual camels. The actual camels are all these white spots that you see at the feet. The actual camels are what you saw, but what you are seeing is the shadows. What is digital twin? Digital twin help us to augment our understanding of the real logistic world. And this is a excellent, nice photo for National Geographic by this photographer. And he took this fantastic picture that helped us to explain what is digital twin. So what is digital twin? This is a real environment where we have conveyor reaching into a production line. Our conveyor reach all the way deep into production area, linking them to the automated warehouse. And this is the digital twin. And you can see this cube down here. This cube means that you can rotate the view. You can zoom in and zoom out, right? Now I'm going to bring you to another spot of the digital twin without traveling the warehouse. This is the warehouse, and this is a digital twin that you can see. You can see the conveyor below here, and then you see conveyors below here. And this is a completed module of what we call a power store, all right? And this is a zoom out view. You actually zoom out, you can see a monorail system carrying pallet. All these yellow boxes are actually pallet. So in the live mode that you saw on our Sync WMS, the pallets are actually moving, all right? It's all in video mode, real time. The pallets will move as and when there is real movement on the entire system. This is what we call visualization, all right? And you can actually see the operation without moving out of the office. How is this used? In the past, we have this 2D view, 2D spot used in control room and are used by technicians and maintenance staff. But nowadays, automation, digital twin, they are used by operation staff. And this is a desk of our operation supervisor. This screen down here on the left is a WMS screen. He's processing an order, he released an order, and he's also given another screen beside him. So now he got two screens to look at. One, he's processed the order, he released an order, he can see the order. All the yellow boxes start to come out from the automated storage, and they will go into the conveyor. In the conveyor, he will see all the 22 pallets being lined up in a conveyor, ready for the forklift to do loading. And then, of course, in the WMS, it will show a green bar that this order has completed. But he can also then see all the orders. If he click on the yellow boxes, he can also see the details of that pallet. And this is our Sync. As I mentioned, we have the visualization down here. And this is the first part of the Industrial 4.0. We talk about descriptive, is describing the operation to us. Over this part, we have Kibana tools to actually help to slice and dice and analyze the data. And this will help us to do optimization. So from descriptive, we go on to optimization. So in the future, we will move into predictive. And after predictive, the fourth stage is the system will prescribe what needs to be done. We call it prescriptive, all right? Of course, then on the top here, we shows that we can actually integrate manual warehouse operation into an automated warehouse. So I'm going to conclude that we need to build a robust and resilient supply chain. And here is a wake-up call article written by Logisim, Dr. Raymond Krishnan, president of Logisim. And here he says that in the future, it's going to be a lot more automated factories and intelligent supply chain, automated warehouses. And of course, then there is the US-China trade war that is going on. And when the new president take on in January, we're not too sure whether this trade war will continue. But then we know that factories are shifting out of China, and it's already happening. And we know that Vietnam is one of the big beneficiary of these factories moving out from China. This speech is done by PM Lee 2 days ago on Monday. And what did he say here? He said, this is the first time I hear cabinet minister in parliament The first time I hear the Prime Minister of Singapore talk about supply chain, right? First time I hear them talk about cold chain. So governments are paying attention to these strategies now. They realize the importance of supply chain and logistics and cold chain in fighting pandemics. So here it talks about vaccine. Vaccine require cold chain management. All right. And here it says it's not normal refrigerator. It need to be minus 70 degrees for Pfizer vaccine. But what is important? The important is that we prepare the infrastructures. And we have been preparing infrastructure since 2003 SARS period. And we need high standard and skilled personnel. All right. I know that Vietnamese has a lot of well-educated professionals, and they are really keen to learn. I have experience talking to some of them. They came to Singapore to visit, and I bring them around. And they are really very intelligent and learning all the good things. All right. So you find that we need high standard and skilled personnel to execute the cold chain management. So we need to get ready. In short, I will just summarize in this. So we need to be prepared, not to be caught off guard by the next pandemic, right? This is a lesson from stockpile. And of course, we can also increase the capacity to handle, have a bigger toilet roll. And then we can also make it even bigger and yet have reserve buffer, right? But this one, the process not so good, right? Run until zero, no more toilet roll again. So you need to have strong processes, all right, in terms of your replenishment strategy. So you need to build in design redundancy and let it be system driven, and the replenishment can be carried out. And of course, if you got real critical area, you will tend to over design, right? And not forgetting, stockpiling are essential. Really critical item is really, really important. And all these photos came out during this COVID period in the last 11 months. With this, I thank you for listening to me. And of course, we got some time for questions here.
So thank you, Dixon, for the sharing. It's very insightful, and it's quite light. I mean, like during this COVID for the past 10, 11 months, and we have a lot of memes coming out, like on the toilet paper rolls and those kind of things. Yeah, I think among the three strategy you mentioned here to prepare for the next, not only the pandemic, but also like natural disaster. I mean, for Vietnam, we are one of the top 5 countries in the world that will be impacted seriously from climate change. So I think beside the pandemic, the disaster like typhoon and all the floods, it will take place even more often. And this strategy is very relevant for company and for supply chains leader to think of. And I do agree that in the futures, like United Nations mentioned that 68% of our population in the world that will live in the urban cities. So we will be more and more living like sardines, like stuck together in the building, in a very close area, and for sure pandemic and all these kind of things can be spread out easily. So I think it's all of these are very relevant for a midterms that supply chain leaders in Vietnam in a region should put together. Unfortunately, we are humans, so you mentioned us that we need to have lunch. We are not like robots. We need to take lunch and all this. My one question is that all these technologies are amazing. It's very inspiring. It's very cool, and for a country like Vietnam, you know Vietnam for a few years now. We are a bit different from Singapore, and the foundation is a bit different as well. So what do you see as a first step for Vietnam, like in terms of gearing towards to more automation? What would be your comment for this?
Although earlier I shared about the 3 strategy in terms of stockpile for cold chain as well as e-commerce.
Yes.
All right, in Vietnam, we're already seeing this opportunity where food processing plants are coming up. and you got the ASRS facility for Vima milk, right? Where food safety is important. And also this production plant, they operate 2 shifts or 3 shifts. So when you got 2 or 3 shifts, the business case for automation, automating the warehouse become very strong, all right? Because then food safety, doing without human from all the way from production all the way to the loading docks. Next is e-commerce. We know that in this region, Vietnam has one of the strongest e-commerce because you've got nearly 100 million population. Thailand is only 70, Malaysia is less than that, 32. Singapore, 5.6 million, right? You got 100 million population. Of course, there are people living in cities. Your city is even bigger than Singapore. So 10 million population cities, e-commerce is going to grow. As I said earlier, the projection for e-commerce is that because it's given a boost by the COVID situation, the retailers, more and more retailers are going omni-channel, which is to move into online as well. All right, so these are the 2 sectors that are going to move faster. Of course, then not forgetting that the supermarket is going to catch up. The stockpiling is also going to catch up.
I have one question from the audience here that they see that you present a lot of material about warehouse. So how about in terms of last mile delivery, how we can enhance our delivery to adapt with the changing requirement in the new normal, at least for the next 2 years, that when the vaccines still being distributed, and it may take some time to get over this pandemic. Do you have any update for last mile delivery automation?
All right. For last mile delivery optimization, what we see in Thailand, Vietnam case, a lot of the optimization is through software. All right, using software apps, using navigation apps to actually help the person picking out the last mile, grouping the orders within a zone. So you're basically going to use software because your labor cost is low. And I think we know well known in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh, you basically got a lot of motorbikes, right? So the delivery is low cost of motorbikes. So you're going to be moving more on software, right? Putting in some robotic processes where they can group orders or zones and so on for pickup and also for delivery. Of course, then in other city area in China, particularly, we are seeing things moving to a bit more hardware. They have in Singapore already, in Malaysia as well, we have pop-up lockers, all right, federated lockers where products are put in the lockers and then people go there and pick it up, all right. Of course, then you have AGVs mounted with pop-up lockers on AGV, and they are trialing this out in China. So we see a lot of good example coming out from China. So China is really quite advanced on this area. So these are going to augment the last mile delivery for e-commerce in years to come.
Yep. Okay. So I think I don't want to take more time of people waiting for lunch. So thank you very much, Dixon, for the sharing and the time you're skipping your lunch. So we hope that you will have a good lunch, and taking this time to wish you also a happy holidays and Christmas coming. I'm sure that in Swisslog you will be not overwhelmed too much with the holiday season because you have all the automation technology, your robot working 24 hours per day, so should be no problem like all the supply chain that we still handle by a human and related on software running by RISE. So thank you very much for sharing. We hope to see you again soon in person in Vietnam, sharing some beer maybe. And for the audience, I would like to remind that we will have another section coming at 2 p.m. today with also another dear friend coming from Dubai, Frost & Sullivan, talking about in 1 hour about supply chain and logistics of the futures gearing to 2025. So a lot of even mega trend and more applications to see around the world for logistics especially. So we will take a break now. We will have the same link and the same access for this room. We hope to see you later in about 2 hours. And for now, have a good lunch and see you later. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Welcome to the Vietnam Supply Chain online series at the end of the year. usually we should have a kind of gathering, like a gala dinner or a year-end awards, some kind of thing like that. But this year, I think in Vietnam, we know in advance a little bit that around December, we may have a third wave of community case. So therefore, we changed our plan that we don't do offline event, and therefore the last kick for the community events, we decided to do online for the safety for everyone. So it turned out to be a very good opportunities that we can reach out to a lot of our own dear friends and supply chain and logistic leaders outside of Vietnam. We say that there's a word in Vietnamese. It means like in every risk there's an opportunity. So in the event like COVID-19, we cannot travel. Then it turned out that we are so close to each other, just away from the screen. So that's why we have this event. And today this is the last event of today. In this series, and we are very honored to welcome one of our own friend. Old friend in a way that we, Gobbo is one of our first speaker in the first conference in 2008 in Saigon. And it's now been 12 years and he still looks the same, but I got to know that he had to sacrifice his mustache because of COVID. So COVID-19 make men have more facial hairs than for Gobbo is a bit different case that he have to remove it for the convenience of wearing masks as well. So he looked much younger than I supposed to see. It's a bit strange, but we get used to it. To the one who are new to Vietnam supply chain, so I am Quinn. I'm the co-founder of Vietnam Supply Chains. It's an organization that focusing on promoting, raising awareness about supply chain management in Vietnam since 2008. So it's been like 12 years. It's a long journey. This is a non-profit organization, so none of us got paid. We all volunteers in our times, including the speakers. And usually we organize like around 30 to 50 events per year. But this year is a very special year, 2020. We organize mostly online events, so we hit around 30. So our usual KPI for number of events is like 60% only, like every business, I think. But that does not prevent us from meeting each other online and sharing and keeping ourselves updated. Taking this opportunity while waiting for other colleagues also joining in the room, this event will be recorded, and if you missed it, I know it's a business hour now in Vietnam, so quite some colleagues may not be able to see it, but they can watch it again we are live stream now on Facebook, so take whatever convenient platform for you to follow us. I want to take this opportunity to also thank and recognize the team behind us. None of the event would be successful with the organizing team. So next to me now here, you can see there's a gentleman. That's his boo, and he's taking care of the event so far. And then in another room, we have Miss Tu, also helping with arranging the registrations and participations. So thank you, the team, for that. So now let's go to the topic of today, which is supply chain and logistic trend, or supply chain of the futures towards 2025. And we are very honored to have our friend Gobbo here from Frost & Sullivan. He leads the global supply chain and logistic practice in the firm and based in Dubai. So it's now like around 11 a.m. there, soon to be lunchtime. Gobbo usually deliver speech and be a keynote speakers in around 75 conference in a year. But I don't know how you're doing this year. Did you do 700 conference online this year, Gobbo? Because you don't have to travel anymore.
No, Gwen, that's for the last decade, I would say.
Okay.
But live events, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Online events, yeah, it keeps happening, but yeah, that's like
So
not just 1 year.
yeah. So you are very busy, I guess. So let's go into the topic today that you were talking about the future supply chain and logistics. And usually we like to hear from Frost and Sullivan about the trends, and we always enjoy your slide, your sharing. So with the new normal like COVID-19 and the pandemic, and also more natural disaster taking place due to the climate change, how is that? What kind of futures of supply chain that should we look forward to?
Sure.
Gobor, over to you. You are feel free to share some slide. During the session today, please, audience, you are free to comment and raise question in the chat box. We will have a Q&A section around 15 minutes at the end of around 40-45 minutes for sharing from Gobor as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Gwen. Thank you so much to the Vietnam supply chain team for putting this together, Boo, as well as rest of the people. So thank you so much for being here. And obviously, being in Vietnam and, would definitely be a different experience altogether. But like you said, the opportunity now with this current scenario is that we get to meet everyone so quickly. Literally meet, in fact, there are a lot of people who used to get on conference calls in the past, but now you actually get to see those colleagues because of the pandemic, which is normally not, not possible. So let me just set the screen and then just do a quick introduction and move into the session.
Yep.
Yes. So thank you so much once again, guys. So for the benefit of the audience, I'm Gopal. I lead the supply chain and logistics practice at Frost & Sullivan. I have been in the Asia Pacific region for close to about 15 years in the past, and been in the Middle East region now for about 5 years now. I've also been other than advisory, I've also been on the supply chain side of the business. So we as Frost & Sullivan, in case you're not aware of us, we are an business advisory and analytics company with a 50-year history, an American organization. In the Asia Pacific region, we have key offices around Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and also some satellite networks in Vietnam and Myanmar and a few other places. So we have been quite active in the Asia Pacific region, working with a lot of private sector as well as a few governments as well. So today the task that Gwen and team have given to me is to look at to present to you a view in terms of what holds from a supply chain and logistics perspective into the future, more so in the immediate future, say 2025. So that's the title of my presentation today. So I would spend, I think, the next 30 minutes to 30 to 35 minutes to walk you through some of the thoughts we have captured in the form of slides. And subsequently, we can have, so we can take questions as well as have an open discussion. Like I said, again, it is like Gwen was mentioning, it's good to carry on with some of these, some of these activities and not get limited, by any kind of, pandemic scenario. So it's good to be around here. So let me get moving. So what we have put together is structured around these, four, topics. So first, I want to take a look at how has COVID-19 impacted economy and trade, because trade is fundamental for logistics and supply chain, right? And the second is a lot of people talk about what's the new normal, because a lot of things have changed. So what is it that is a new normal? And the third is in terms of what are the growth opportunities that exist in the current frame of things, and finally, Vision 2025. What can we expect? So these are the 4 areas that I will cover during the course of our next 30 minutes. So, firstly, looking at what has been the impact in terms of COVID-19 on economy and trade. Now, in fact, when I was thinking whether it is relevant to talk about, whether it is relevant to talk about second wave, and Gwen was talking about third wave potentially in terms of lockdown. So this is a little bit of a scenario where people thought the pandemic peaked at a certain point, but now we are seeing a continuous rise. In fact, even in the Middle East region, in UAE, when it all started, we thought the peak was around 500 to 600 cases per day. But suddenly we realized, no, the nature of the game is once it starts to sort of, spread, it is almost like double of that, which we are experiencing now. But everyone is moving ahead, despite a first wave or a second wave. I think everyone is moving ahead because they see light around the corner in the form of vaccine, plus also, the nature of the need of the economy, as well as the need for people to keep moving, is all the more critical now. You cannot just sit tight, and so it's like you manage all your precautions and keep moving. And what has this resulted in terms of the forces that have shaped this ecosystem today, with a lot of these lockdown measures and things limping back to normalcy? We experienced things like plant closures, cargo capacity had significant challenges. Now it's improving. There was a time when in the past, many of the lanes, the capacity was down to just about 20% of what it used to be. Now it is at least getting to maybe 50%, 60%, 70% of the available cargo capacities along those various trade lanes. We had border restrictions, consequently leading to business continuity measures. Demand and supply shocks led to emergency response systems. Everybody started recognizing the need for risk mitigation. People used to talk about risk, but never applied the principles of mitigation. Amidst all these air travel restrictions, obviously we're all working from home, and production relocations happening. And amidst all the social distancing, the silver lining in this whole process is e-commerce, right? So having said that, if you look at how the trade scenario today is, I think trade is expected to contract. The closest that when I looked at a 20-30 year period, I would say 20-year period in terms of trade and economy, the closest that comes through is actually the 2009 financial crisis, when trade dipped almost about 22% in that year. The rest of it, MERS, SARS, and all those things, I think most of it were contained within the respective regions, and consequently the trade impact was very negligible, if at all there was any from a global trade perspective. But today you see that most of the cases, the trade suffered big time over the last 3 to 4 quarters, and it's started picking up effectively in some of the regions. Specifically, China picked up early because of medical supplies, and European Union and so on. So it's picked up, but the economic impact has been there. So probably from a trade perspective, net, the anticipation is that I think it'll be close to about 20 to 25% dip in 2020 from a global trade. Now, economic impact, I think the Eurozone has faced almost about a 5-quarter recession, with most of the other regions like South Asia, Middle East, as well as, I think Asia Pacific was spared a little bit more, I would say, because by the time we got into the core of things, I think Asia was a little bit more better off. So for most of the economies, I would say that the positive growth will will start to surface probably in Q1 of 2021. And having said that, from an overall economic standpoint, from a global economy, you would see that at the Q1 you will start seeing the positive uptrend, and Q2 will show a high growth rate, primarily because the Q2 of this year was in the trough, not necessarily because things start growing, but relative to the Q2 of 2020, you will see a spike in Q2 of 2021. So looking at this scenario, what is the new normal? So I'll cover a few pointers on the new normal towards in the later part of this section. First, let's look at what are some of the key trends. Firstly, obviously, the single source supply has been questioned and put to test significantly. Just as a simple example of some of the main industrial clusters in China, so you can see how networked the rest of the world is, with China in terms of so many different component supplies, whether it is engineering, pharmaceuticals, instrumentation, electronics, or automotive, or toys, or clothing. So this has been the significant reason for the supply chain shock. So this is resulting in companies trying to look at reshoring as well as supply chain diversification, driven by the need for high reliance to move away from single source of supplies. Obviously, the beneficiaries in most of these cases are some of the emerging Southeast Asian economies, specifically, for example, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. In addition, some of these production relocations are also aimed at locations like, for example, India and Middle East and Latin America too. Second, the nationalization is the new globalization. I think across the board, most countries and regions have started looking at self-reliancy and reducing the dependency on other countries. So this is the key theme of most of the policies now. So for example, US trying to increase the content from the local region perspective. European Union relaxed some regulatory compliance on personal protection equipment, as well as European companies looking to move from China to Thailand and Vietnam. India focusing on self-reliance initiative, trying to look at new regulations for label identification, as well as Africa and Latin America too, trying to move away from the reliance in terms of China. Vaccine supply chain is also keeping a lot of companies busy now. So, over the next 18 to 24 months, you would see that the vaccine supply chain is a very critical, will play a very critical part, right from the perspective of raw materials, suppliers, manufacturing, distribution, reaching to the hospitals and consumers. I think at every stage of the process, you will see that there is a need, for example, to determine the critical components, identify the suppliers, as well as the laboratory and people to produce, secure logistics capacity, as well as storage and transportation and eventually delivery. In fact, today, because of the platform that these various types of vaccines are built, there is some vaccines might even require a temperature gradient in terms of storage to the extent of -50 to -70 degrees. These are things that is going to completely require a new set of the supply chain, contrary to the current vaccine supply chain, which probably requires maybe around -10 to -20 degrees. But most of it, they expect that it may still fit into it, but there are certain there are some 3-4 different platforms on which these vaccines are made. If one of those, it becomes more dominant, then that would require a different kind of temperature gradient for us from the supply chain perspective. And of course, all this, the pandemic scenario has resulted in a sharp contraction in terms of manufacturing sector. You would see LATAM and Europe getting significantly impacted. World manufacturing has gone down almost about 11% during the first half. But of course, China's rebound has been helpful for some of the other economies too. Now, overall, if you look at the COVID-19 across across most economies, you would see that the industries that are reliant on physical activity and proximity have been impacted most. Manufacturing, travel and tourism, airline, energy and resources, as well as traditional retail. But whereas on the other side, there are also industries which thrived during this period, which is healthcare and pharmaceuticals, insurance, technology, telecom, and video streaming. I think Zoom has been probably in existence for a long time, but nobody has probably used it so much in communicating with the rest of the world. So it's like, for example, Teams probably existed, but nobody realized that the entire education network is probably getting on Teams, and almost there is there's probably no student is more expert at Teams than you and me today, right? So the global value chain is undergoing a transformation. Why? Because 50% of the intermediate goods form the global trade. So which means that the trade is comprised, 50% of it is intermediate goods, which is most vulnerable to supply chain disruption, right? So the strategies of these goods undergo transformation, and they are also capital and knowledge intensive, and consequently pose challenges when you're trying to rebalance it. For example, saying from China to Vietnam, then for example, you may want to start thinking about whether Vietnam has the necessary skills. Can I get the necessary, capital equipment, and so on and so forth. So the dependence, obviously, clearly people are trying to look at reducing the dependence, away from China, procure from other, low-cost countries. And there is also this initiative, by India, Japan, and Australia, which talks about resilient supply chain initiative. So which will also, moving forward, increase the trade in that particular region. The other interesting factor which is leading to transformation is the catalyst for digitization. So today, like I was mentioning, so lockdown has accelerated digital transformation. Everybody has been talking about digital transformation, but I think this lockdown scenario has really accelerated. So today, because the lockdown has impacted cross-border and customs, self-isolation led to more online shopping, and service providers are also opting for digital solutions to combat COVID-related challenges. And in fact, there was one clip which was making rounds in LinkedIn, etc. So who's driving digital transformation in your organization? The CEO, the CTO, or COVID-19? Obviously, the tick goes to COVID-19, because COVID-19 has been driving the digital transformation initiative. So all this, the result is, as you look at the last 20 years, or even if you can do the 100 years if you have data, you would see that the transportation and logistics industry, the growth pattern is pretty much aligned with the global economy, because this is dependent on trade, and trade obviously is a function of the economy. That's why it's straightforward that it goes hand in hand. So there are two scenarios based on this. As you can see here, obviously the closest that comes is the 2009 financial crisis. So 2003 SARS, which we experienced, in fact, I was there in that region at that time, where it was pretty much contained around Hong Kong, etc., and MERS, Middle East, pretty much in this region. But financial crisis and COVID-19 has got a similar impact in terms of economy and trade. So the expectation is that the transportation and logistics industry, in an optimistic scenario, could contract by about 2% in 2020 to grow by about 8%, or from a pessimistic scenario with sustained lockdowns and the restraining measures and so on, could lead to reduction of about 5% in this year and potentially growing by about 7% in the next year. So what does this mean for a new normal? So the new normal, let me deal with the new normal in 3 stages. One is freight transportation. Then I'll talk about the core logistics services, then the supply chain. So the freight today, I think across the board with cross-border and customs, etc., being impacted, people have expected the road freight to become more visible, simplify the border process, and expecting a solution rather than saying, I will move from A to B. Second, from a sea freight standpoint, with so much of blank sailings and port challenges, people are trying to transform into smart port operations, technology-driven clearance, and freight aggregation is happening in the ocean freight space. Air freight, people are setting up cargo community systems. There are airlines which are trying to fill the gap in terms of the last mile distribution, acquiring companies in land freight, focus on efficiency and the global cargo network, because significant part outside of North America, I think 70% of us in most regions rely on belly cargo, which got greatly impacted because of the no flights flying, right? So, and multimodal, focus on integration. So far, we used to talk about multimodal, but there was no proper integration and simplification of compliance and aligning with the supply chain. Logistics, so with the same 3 angles of digitization, process change, and business model, when we look at contract logistics, digital supply chains and getting customer centric information and everything that they need to know through a portal, and customer focused solutions, which is like healthcare logistics or automotive logistics or vertical logistics, this has become key. Warehousing, I think with the challenges that we have experienced, I think everybody is moving or will move to a space where you'll look at more robots in the warehouse than people. The automation will no longer be called as I have MHC or material handling equipment in the warehouse, but it'll be more of robots, which can even take you into a concept of dark warehouse without people. And focus will be on optimizing the inventory, and there will be also at country level initiatives which will talk about trying to aggregate the warehousing assets. Freight forwarding, there will be more role of freight marketplaces, process automation and collaboration with startups. Courier and parcel, obviously this has greatly benefited because of e-commerce. So there is more focus on delivery automation, as well as today with the vaccine supply chain coming in, there you will see a little bit more sophistication in terms of how things are delivered. So it'll further define beyond e-commerce the express, courier, and parcel business. And supply chain, so there used to be a concept of GIT, but now it is, I think, GIC, which is not just in time, but just in case if you need it. So this will actually have an impact in terms of inventory management, nearshoring, as well as manufacturing network diversification, more standardization, so that you don't have to deal with multiple varieties, multi-sourcing and ecosystem partnerships. So maybe if I can explain some of these points. So firstly, if you look at the, the procurement angle, so you will see that there will be people will be more interested in understanding where it really comes from, so that they will want to know beyond the tier ones and tier two suppliers. Inventory, so they will really want to focus on, on the risk mitigation and not just expecting everything on a just-in-time basis. Then dependency on single supplier or region will no longer be a norm, but there will be parallel supply chains that will be built just in case one fails, the other will deliver. And proximity, you will see more proximity. So like I said, the reverse of globalization, localization will happen. And also people who have better visibility in terms of the demand will have, will be in a better position to actually keep track of, to maximize the opportunities. So what does this lead to in terms of opportunities? So the restrictions have triggered opportunities. So today, from an ocean freight, we saw, empty container repositioning was a challenge, port congestion, stuck shipments. Then you have, for air freight in terms of capacity constraints, belly capacity was not available, border delays and driver shortages on road freight, and social distancing and labor intensive operations impacting warehousing, and freight capacity challenges impacting contract logistics, and last mile delivery operations leading to higher costs. So all this will actually result in, for example, ocean freight, modernization of transport infrastructure, cargo tracking and port management, air freight in terms of charter, increased charter, cold chain infrastructure for perishables and pharma, and cargo security focus, road freight in terms of telematics, fleet management, and delivery automation. And in some of these countries, you will start seeing more rapid implementation of autonomous. For example, I know last evening I was talking to somebody about the autonomous trucking that was being tried in Germany, for example. So they will actually go accelerate the deployment. Warehousing, automation and wearables for sorting and packing, robots for loading and unloading, and contract logistics from warehouse and service delivery, automation, predictive analytics and cargo monitoring. E-commerce will see more adoption in terms of delivery robots, drones, and autonomous vehicles. In fact, these locker boxes, etc., have become a very common theme now. When I go to some malls in the UAE, and we see drones being tested, autonomous delivery robots being also experimented, and so on. So there'll be some structural changes driven by technology and consumers. So one, the digital disruption. You will see more startups and disruptive business models creating digital platforms and more next level analytics, cross-border e-commerce resulting in, because of the physical restrictions on outlets and increasing last mile costs. So you would actually see more last mile delivery models, and air freight capacity. The challenges and constraints result in modal shifts and charter services, globalization and reshoring. So search for alternate locations, which will basically put new countries on the map of a supply network, and not necessarily and not just limited to China. And the logistics capacity challenges, which have been a consequence of the lower efficiencies, will lead to more modernization of transport infrastructure. Now, e-commerce certainly has been the savior of the economy in this current scenario. Now there'll be there'll be more developments along these lines in terms of contactless operations, reduction in middlemen, augmented reality, where you get, you show more experience to customers. Re-commerce, which is, for, used products, wider reach, and also there'll be some social commerce purchases directly on social media, making it easy and hassle-free, and obviously, last mile delivery. So this year has been more about the omnipresence. So customer journey is now far from linear, and it is actually dependent on multiple devices and multiple platforms. So it'll lead to more of multi-channel efficiency, platform-specific messaging, and right action to to drive the the right attraction with the customers, the right hook. So one of the things that I think organizations need to do is to start thinking, a little innovatively, rather than looking at the same things to grow. So one of the things is a few pointers would be to capture the entire value chain of the customer vertical. So recently, when I was speaking to one of the liner logistics service providers, so the interesting concept they did was, rather than doing, for example, a particular, specializing in a certain vertical, warehousing solution or transportation solution, what they did was they mapped the entire vertical. They said, I can provide transportation, I'm providing warehousing, and I'm providing, what else can I provide to this vertical? So they completed the entire cycle, said, look, okay, for automotive, for example, maybe I can take it to the next level of battery distribution, battery storage for electric vehicles, and two-wheelers, and so on and so forth. So it's important to look at your entire customer vertical. For example, there was one, hardcore trucking services provider. They said, I want to get a little deeper into the intralogistics. How would I do it? So all that they did was they created a drones plus software function. So they bought the drone from somebody, they created the software, packaged it, and you go to a warehouse of your customer and say, look, I have this drone solution, which you can use to do the intralogistics. So that is, that is an innovative way in which, you can extend through the entire value chain. Build flexible capacity and capability. So today it is all about having that flexibility, and strengthen the global and regional networks. Everybody used to claim that they are connected, etc. But suddenly, when the pandemic struck, you realize that you're alone. You got cut off. So the real network needs to be built. And also, you would see that today, for example, there are a lot of platforms, e-commerce platforms, the likes of Amazon in any market, right? Lazada, for example. So you have many companies like those. But what is really important is, as service providers, you need to pick up certain key brands and help them empower and build their e-commerce. I think that is what is more important. So today, there are so many brands who don't know how to get on an e-commerce. So they could be limited by the fact that, okay, I supply to a platform. Instead, you can create a solution saying, look, go to a company, and say, I can build your entire e-commerce system. So I'll store it, distribute it, give you an inventory thing, and even source it, and manage your payments, and so on and so forth. And also focus on SME solutions. Today, specifically, this is valid from a Southeast Asia or any emerging market perspective. 99% of our establishments in Southeast Asia, I think I can safely say 98. The number of establishments is SMEs, right? So it's only the 2% is the large companies. So this makes it even more important that you focus on the 98% and not just try to crowd the 2%, which can lead to price wars, which will basically lead to undercutting. So that's why it is all happening, because you leave the wider space open. In fact, almost during the last decade, I saw some large players come into some of the Southeast Asian markets and set up teams to target the medium enterprises in those countries. So that's where we need to focus on. So having said that, what does it hold to look, in terms of the opportunities looking into 2025? So firstly, you would see there is a transition to an efficient and integrated supply chain network. So all, more than ever, there is regional integration will be a focus. Production relocations is sure to happen. In fact, already we see trends that in critical segments like electronics and semiconductors and so on, already 30% of estimated capacities of large players have been moved out of China. So China will not be completely out of the equation, but you will see a gradual shifting. So today's 30%, which probably was a quick reaction, will eventually reach to 60%. So China, which was 100%, will get reduced to maybe 30 to 40%. And China is also understanding this, and that's why you see that even, for example, semiconductors, which is a subject that I recently spoke about, we realized that from from being 10% dependent on the global companies to produce in China, China wants to take it to 70% domestic for their internal consumption by their local companies, because they realize that they will start losing that 60% of the business, which is something that they've already figured out. You will see new trade corridors. So suddenly you will see, a few years back, I think almost about 12 years back, I saw there was, people who are interested in, an air freight corridor of Vietnam to Africa. I think some of those trade lanes will start to resurface. The digital supply chain network will become even more important. Multimodal, we keep talking about it, but nobody had real clarity and figured out. I think it'll become even more critical. Emergence of mega hubs. So you will see, the different kinds of hubs which will try to consolidate and offer interoperability in terms of capacities, mega ships, warehouse automation. Business models will become more innovative. So there will be people who will try to start looking at, new niche areas and trying to, come up with new opportunities. Digital, platforms will grow. Of course, you will see so many of them in every country. I think you will see at least that, after the tier one, the dominant digital platform, there will be at least about 30 to 40 digital platforms, which may not see beyond 5 to 7 years, but you will still see the growth of these. Sustainability will become very important. And we have been talking about it. In fact, 10 years back, I remember green supply chain. Now the name is different, but I think sustainability and risk management will become even more critical. And e-commerce logistics is here to stay, but needs to be conducted in a little bit more efficient manner, so that again you are not jumping into a system where you are actually trying to fight for 6%, 7% gross margins, right? So the future of supply chain and logistics, we believe that these are the 5 areas which can really make an impact: technology, infrastructure and connectivity, cross-border, resilience and sustainability, and delivery models. So you would see new areas which will become more dominant revenue streams in terms of predictive, real-time analysis, security, and also, route optimization, capacity enhancements, cost, digital supply chain, autonomous and, process automation. You will see more use of drones, electric vehicles, and analytics powered planning, digital freight platforms, and, warehouse space aggregations and last mile delivery innovations. So all this, what can you do? Multimodal. So you can try to look at how to gain greater integration of of transport network and improve the connectivity in areas where you can play, and distribution, how to enhance efficiencies, the disruption in the traditional services, how to align the future business models. Visibility, I think everybody knows data and technology is important, but how can you simplify the visibility? And automation, how to be in sync for seamless freight movement, and cross-border, how can you play a larger and connected role? And infrastructure, it's all about bringing the process and technology together to attend to the bottlenecks. It's not trying to create just a capacity. And digitization, how can you connect across the entire value chain? So these are some key questions I would encourage you to ask your businesses, specifically to see where you can play a role in these emerging opportunities, so that today, if you plan for something that you want to explore over the next 5 years, I think from thoughts to action, it probably will take a little bit of time. I think it is important to start questioning your businesses so that you can at least execute certain actions into the new year, so you still have time to capture these opportunities. So just a quick a minute before I turn it back to Gwen as well as you for questions. So we as Frost & Sullivan, we have been helping helping customers connect with our clients, connect with customers better, revise forecast plans, and focus on new and emerging opportunities, as well as best practices and so on. In the supply chain space, we focus on supply chain services, freight, maritime, and the rail part of the business. And we believe these 8 key strategic imperatives will make a difference, in terms of how the business are driven in terms of innovation, convergence, disruption, as well as value chain compression, and so on. So that's a quick close. So thank you so much, guys, for being around, and over to you, Gwen.
Yep. Thank you, Gobor. It's a very quick snapshot for the futures. It's a very good guideline for us to base on. Just like your presentation, like 12 years ago, I remember we did in this hotel and conference room, and you mentioned about multimodal transport, logistic, and happy to see it again here. I have a few questions, while the audience may also share some question later. Some first question is that I think right now the economy model is really like linear, right? So make, consume, and then throw away. So it's really much like what we're doing now with the supply chain model, like plan, sold, make, deliver, then a little bit of returns. How do you see, I know that you mentioned about supply chain sustainability, but how do you see that if now we are really a lot of the circular economy model become more and more popular, and I believe that that will be the futures, because like the futures of the Gen Z and millennial, they are the one that making this happen, the Greta generations. So how will supply chain will become more circular? When will we will have a circular, like supply chain model really happen, not just like theory? How do you see that? Like maybe in 20 years or in 10 years?
Well, I would see that a little bit more shorter, Gwen. I think very interesting question. And the fact that many of the countries beyond just the Western countries are already starting to think about, or not think about, are creating frameworks for circular economy. So that means that today managing the returns as well as disposal has become a new business. Like I said, that people are finding that as part of the circular economy as a new business opportunity. So you would actually, I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, in Vietnam, you have a circular economy, policy management, and even a ministry dedicated to that in a year from now. It is very much possible with the amount of focus. I think the government will probably start thinking about what this leads to. So this is an opportunity space for any company looking at it. I think you should start planning it now. So if you aim to enter it in 2021, you will have an early starter advantage, because this is probably a trend. It will become a hot trend probably the year after. We won't wait for 5 years or 10 years. I think in 2022, I can safely say you will be having, when you have a physical conference, you will actually be talking about circular economy and reverse logistics in a significant manner in 2022.
Yeah, I think in Vietnam we already have the Circular Economy Institutes run by the government, and the guy, the director, has been very busy delivering speech around. Quite sure it's the futures. I'm very happy to see in your presentation also you mentioned about e-commerce. Like those kind of things should become much more popular. Yesterday, on the section yesterday and today mentioned a lot about technology and automation, like robot, AGV, on those kind of things. Then I've been wonder, and like as human, then for supply chain talents for the future, that we were gearing into much more technology driven. Then what do you see in terms of human labor force? What kind of futures talent skill that they need to have to cope with this new future that it will happen?
Yeah, I think like the term that they use in in some of these segments, I think upskilling and reskilling are two important aspects. So you won't just rely on the labor force to just pick something and put it in another place.
Yeah.
So if the human being has the ability to think why it is lying in that place and why it should go to another place, I think that's the skill that human being or a warehouse staff needs to develop, and not just I move this from this rack to the picking area, I move this from the loading area to the bins. I think so if they are doing that movement job, that doesn't exist for them anymore. But in turn they start thinking about, okay, I need this to go somewhere, and why should it go? I think that thinking is something that, and acting is something that the human workforce will add more value, and that's where we need to focus on.
What kind of skill you will upskill yourself for the futures? Are you going?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. I think one of the important skills, personally from our standpoint, I think it's important to see the new tools that are being deployed from a digital perspective. Today, we don't maybe necessarily need to go in terms of like the coding or how it happens, but what functions it addresses and what are probably the tools that can actually help resolve certain functions, I think today, and what functions can actually be converted from paper, manual to digital. I think getting a better feel of all these things, I think, is very important. And most importantly, I think whatever technology skill that exists, but I think even more important will be the human skill. Today, for example, we all are qualified in different subjects, but a lot of us probably don't have the best of the best human interface skills. I think with the limited amount of time that we are going to be spending interfacing with human beings, I think that will become even more even more of a priority, that you really need to have better human connect skills. And I think we shouldn't forget that it doesn't just stop with an email.
Yeah. We received a question from Dũng, from Henry. The question was, I will say that Dũng, if you have more time, then come back on Friday, because your question were very much about consumer trends and food and beverage industry. We have a session at 1 p.m. on Friday, it covering that, and hopefully you can get much more information. Today we're talking, this section is talking more about like supply chain logistic trend for the futures. So not particular for F&B industry. One more question for to Global, as you based in Middle East, then you may also be aware the company of Elon Musk, Hyperloop, is a kind of new logistic, how to say, logistic way to transfer good around. Did you have any update from that? And from the Hyperloop story, from your practice, do you see any other potential new form of logistic for the futures? I heard about Hyperloop and also like balloon, green balloon for air cargo, those kind of things, and those innovation. Do you think that it will anything more you heard from them?
Yeah, interesting. In fact, I think this is one point I will probably, refer back to one of my colleagues who is also attending, this webinar, and who is active, actively researching in this space to consider this as to be documented as one of the trends for the future. Yep. Hyperloop recently, they have actually tested with some freight movement, right? So obviously before testing with people, I think they also did, some test with some people, but the freight was also tested. So primarily, I mean, not just the people aspect would certainly come into play, but freight will probably be the first mover through Hyperloop. That is definitely the case. And the testing, recently they published some successful, ways in which they actually moved. So there's a Hyperloop planned between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which roughly, takes about an hour now, probably will be down to probably less than 6 or 7 minutes or less than 10 minutes. So it's everybody's looking forward to it. And a lesser known thing, which I just wanted to, just want to share, is that Singapore had already been looking at, ways to, to avoid the containers moving, for example, on the surface. They've already tried, and they're doing it in, in certain pockets by moving, containers by underground, from PSA to Jurong and so on. So you would actually see a futuristic scenario where probably, maybe I can safely say 6 to 7 years from now, maybe the later part of the upcoming decade, you would probably not see freight on the surface. Either you would see them in the air, or you would see them in tubes, whether it is Hyperloop or under the ground.
Yeah.
So because that will greatly bring down the, that'll greatly bring down the emission issue, because we start focusing more on the sustainability angle. So you would see more, the same thing, because right now this pandemic created an incredible adoption, like what they used to talk about, exponential adoption of technology. So similarly, today, some of these climate changes, etc., are creating just gradual business cases. I think when there is a sudden shock to the business ecosystem, that's when you will see a sudden transformation. Otherwise, things will keep moving in incremental basis for at least for some time.
Yep. Thank you for enlightening us for more information about the Hyperloop and also possible futures way of moving things around, like about in the air or underground. Time is limited, and Zoom connecting us, but time doesn't allow us to continue. So I think it's time to thanks for your sharing. A lot of informations, and even though it's short, but it's laying off the guideline for our futures. And of course, Vietnam is new to supply chain, and we are open to learn. So hopefully, all of your sharing today will have quite a lot of supply chain leader that to think about the possibility in the futures. So once again, thank you for your time. We really taking this opportunity to wish you also happy holidays coming at the year end, and take a break. And then hopefully everyone be safe for the new year 2021. Hopefully it's a better year, for a year of growth, like your company tagline, everything starting with G, like your name. So wish you a big G for next year. And for the audience, we don't share the slide today. So if you like anything or you have any questions further later on, feel free to send an email to Vietnam Supply Chain. And today is half of the way that we have this series. Tomorrow we have nothing. Then Friday we will have 3 sections that really much focus on Vietnam. So I encourage like Henry and Dũng, that the one asking about Vietnam coming back. We have three topics on Friday. One starting at 8 a.m. And we cover about Vietnam supply chain outlook for next year. We also share a recent surveys that we asked over 100 supply chain leader about what they think for this year, and also what do they perceive hope for next year. It will be very good to join. And then 1 p.m. we have a specific topic talking about demands, right? So every supply chain, everything start with a market, with a demand. So for sure we talk about demands and consumer trends. 1 p.m. on Friday, it will be shared by Raf from InFocus, a research company, very famous one here in Vietnam. And the last part is about at 4 p.m. we have sourcing, like what to source in Vietnam or in Asia, and especially in the new normal, the trend. Now we know the consumers, then the manufacturing, then of course we need to know about procurement science as well. So that will bring us to the end of session today. We hope to see you again on Friday. So for now, we wish you, Gopal, a good lunchtime there, and for the rest, have a good work for today, and see you on Friday. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, and best wishes. Thank you.
Thank you.